welcome to another spooky video. This is a little different. We are going to be telling scary stories today. I hope you like the ambiance, the room. I got it all cozy for you guys with the fire, and we're going to be telling 5 scary stories that have personally happened to me. I do plan on doing a scary storytelling video telling your scary stories, so if you have any scary stories, make sure to check the link in the description to the Google Forms and you can send through your scary stories and they might be read out on stream. Now, I was gonna format this the same way you see your typical scary stories, however, it just didn't feel like me, so we're doing this way. So how about you guys rug up, get a blanket, get cozy, get comfy, and let's snuggle up and tell some scary stories. Okay, I got my blanket, I'm all nice and cozy, let's get to storytelling. So, our first scary story takes place around about 12 or so years ago. This one is tame, this is on the lighter side. This is to do with my old cat. He was a rescue and he liked to venture outside, and unfortunately one day he ended up passing away due to a cat fight. Our neighbor had informed us that she heard cats fighting and she thought it was our cat, and when we couldn't find him we started to feel unsure, and we did go out looking for him and we found him passed away in someone's driveway. It was very unfortunate and very sad. We took him home. We buried him in the front yard, and to mark where we had buried him, we placed his collar on a stick, and his collar had a little bell. And I remember my younger sister at the time really wanted his collar. We told her, look, you can't take the collar, we need it to mark his grave, as we had buried him in our front garden that was still being worked on, and we didn't want to accidentally dig him up. So we had put his collar where we buried him. We went inside, we were crying, mourning. It was very, very sad. And as we're sitting there, we hear this light jingle down the hallway. And it was very reminiscent of how a cat may slightly jog or walk down the hallway and the bell is bouncing against its chest. It was really strange to hear. We all heard it, we all looked, and then we all looked at one another like, what was that? I looked to my sister because we thought she had taken the collar. God knows how it would have jingled, but we just assumed it was her. And she said she never took the collar, and we just all looked in disbelief that we all unanimously heard this jingle down the hallway. My sister did tell me that she heard it more than that one time, but me personally, I only heard it the one time. And although it's not that scary, it is something tame to get us started. And I like to tell that story as it's sweet to think that maybe he was letting us know that he was still around. Our next story is maybe a couple years, or maybe, yeah, about a couple years after this happened, maybe 1 or 2. We had gotten new cats, we had 2 cats, and at the time I was probably 13 or so. I just started high school, and this one is where it gets a little bit more scary. So at the time I was the only one in high school, and my younger siblings still went to primary school. So after school, they would go to my grandparents' house, and I would walk home from high school, and I would be home for roughly about 45 minutes to an hour by myself before my mum was able to pick up my siblings and bring them home. I had walked home. It was a regular day. I went inside, I made some toast, I sat on the couch, I was going to watch TV, and all of a sudden I could hear this kind of rummaging sound from in the hallway, more so towards the bathroom that was at the very end of the hallway. And at first I didn't think much of it. I kind of sat in silence and I was listening, and at first I did think maybe we had locked one of the cats in the bathroom on accident. I'm sure as some of us may know as cat owners, they tend to get in places they're not supposed to be, and they're very quiet. And there has been a moment or two where we've closed them in a room and not realized, only to come home from work or come home from the shops and then be like, oh, sorry. So I thought it was the cats. As I was having that thought, I see both of my cats walk right by me, and my heart sinks. I just remember looking down the hallway and listening. The door was closed, and I just didn't know what to do. My mum had left a broom by the front door because she had been sleeping, and I picked it up, and in the deepest voice I could muster, for whatever reason, I yelled down the hallway, and I say, "Who's down there?" And the loudest crash happened, so loud. I freaked out, and we had this little table between the front door and the bathroom. I sat on that table. I had clear view of the bathroom, and I had clear view of the front door. And I sat there for the full 45 minutes to an hour waiting for my mum to get home. I was too scared to do anything else. And my mum comes to the door, and I jump up, and I was like, "Mum, you need to go down there. I heard a noise. Someone's in the bathroom. You need to go down there." She looked at me like I was crazy. She goes down there, opens the door, and there's nothing there. And I said to her, I was like, "Are you sure? Like, nothing's falling over? Maybe something was loose and just so happened to fall down when I yelled." And nothing. Nothing was missing. Nothing was different. Nothing had fallen in the bathroom. I still to this day don't know what that could have been, because I genuinely remember that so vividly, and it still makes me feel unsure to this day. I don't know if it was a ghost. I don't even know what caused the sound, and it was so perfectly timed to when I yelled down the hallway that it couldn't have been a coincidence. Our next story, however, takes us to around about the age of 16 or so. And at the time, I had my own bedroom, and the way that my bedroom was kind of situated was my bed was right in front of my window, and then also right in front of my door. So if you can imagine a door, my bed, the window, basically all in a line. So if I was to be laying on my back, I could see straight out of my bedroom if the door was open. And also at the time, my younger sister had this thing where she needed to say goodnight to people before she went to bed. And if she couldn't say goodnight to my mum, she would come and say goodnight to me instead. And I just remember one night I had woken up, and this was a ongoing occurrence. I tended to wake up a lot during the night at this time, and it happened so frequently that when it did happen, I paid no mind to it. At this particular moment, I had opened my eyes and realized I was awake. I was on my tummy, and I just kind of opened my eyes and slightly glanced around like, okay, I'm awake. However, I had this urge to peer over my shoulder, and so I peer over to the right, only so slightly, and I see a figure at the end of my bed. I thought it was my sister, so I'm like, "Hey, what do you want?" She didn't answer. I asked her again, "Do you want to say goodnight? I'm trying to sleep." And she didn't answer. So I tell her goodnight, I roll over, and I pay no mind to her whatsoever, and eventually fall back asleep. The next morning, we're getting ready for school, and I go up to my sister because it was really weird that she didn't speak to me last night. And I said to her, I was like, "Hey, did you come into my room last night to say goodnight? You know, what was that about?" And she just looks at me and she's like, "I didn't go in your room last night." And it makes me feel so sick in the tummy, because just to picture this, my sister is tall, skinny, and at the time had hair to her butt, dark brown. She was the walking grudge. And so if you can imagine that night when I rolled over and saw this girl with long dark hair standing at the end of my bed and just assumed it was my sister, when all I could, who knows, it could have been a demon. There could have been a demon at the end of my bed, and I thought it was my sister. So I was shocked. I was like, please don't say that, please don't say that. But there was nothing I could do at that point. The experience had already happened. She told me it wasn't her, and thankfully it never happened again. The only thing I can debunk it by is that as I can't see very well, my peripheral isn't also that great, and so when I was looking at the corner of my eye, I could have just made up that I saw something, and because I was too tired, I didn't have the effort to completely roll around. I really just assumed it was my sister. But it wasn't. It wasn't my sister. I don't know what it was. I'm hoping it wasn't a demon. I'm hoping it wasn't anything scary, but it did happen, and it was scary, and I didn't like it. Our next story takes place around the age of 17 to 18, I believe. I'm still having my sleeping issues where I'm waking up in the night. This time though, my bedroom is slightly rearranged. So my window now is to my right side and my door is to my left. My bed is against the wall. And at this stage, my wall was not completed. Me and my sister shared a room for a very long time, and we decided to build a wall in the living room to make me a new bedroom. And so if you can imagine, there were wooden beams of a structure to a wall present, but no real wall. There was just a sheet to give me some form of privacy, and I could see straight out my bedroom. When you look straight out my bedroom, there is this massive wooden chest that we use to keep winter blankets in, and on top of the chest was a massive mirror as well. In front of the doorway at the time, and in front of the mirror, was a clothes hoist that we used to dry our clothes. I do believe it was probably winter at this time, which we do tend to use indoor clothes hoists. We don't use dryers here, so we air dry our clothes. And so there was quite a lot happening in the doorway, and I say this with good reason. I woke up one night, on my back, eyes opened, like I normally do, a common occurrence. I'm looking around and I'm not really thinking much because it happened so often. I was just kind of enjoying the peaceful night. And I look to my doorway and I see a figure. And not just any figure. This figure was crouched on the wooden chest. It was in a perfect 90-degree angle squat. Its torso was completely horizontal, flat straight out, and its arms were dangling down to the ground. Its head was also kind of lifeless and not really doing much, and as I looked at this figure, I couldn't stop staring. I wasn't sure what I was seeing, and so I was staring to kind of bring it to life more. I wanted to see it more clearly. I was trying to adjust to the darkness. And I wasn't scared either. It was a very weird experience. I wasn't afraid of this figure. I really just wanted to know what it was. And the more that I looked at it, the more it came clear. Until eventually, it almost seemed like it noticed that I saw it. And it slowly just turns its head over to me. And in that moment, that's when I felt fear. And in that moment, that's when I realized I was having sleep paralysis. I didn't notice the entire time that I couldn't move my legs, I couldn't move my arms, I couldn't move my body. All I could move was my eyes, and usually I never think twice about that because I would always wake up in the night and I tended to just lay in the same position I opened my eyes in and hoped I would just fall asleep again. And as soon as I saw it turn its head, my instinct reaction was to close my eyes. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I couldn't move. I panicked. And thankfully I fell asleep quite quickly after that, and thankfully never had that experience again. I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks on me, with the darkness, with the wooden beams and the clothes hoist and the mirror, all reflecting these different dark shapes and shadows, making me believe I saw something. But I know what I saw. I've told this story many a time, and if you are a member of my Twitch, you have definitely heard this story before, and if you are a close friend, you have definitely heard this story before, because I tell this one often. It is one of those experiences that I simply cannot explain, but I do love to tell it. We're on to story number 5. This one is not paranormal. It was real. It happened to me about 2 or so years ago, and is the scariest real life experience I have ever had. It's the first time I had to call the police, and I'm hoping it'll be the last. Now, for context, I lived alone. I lived in a unit of 6. There was 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top. So I was number 1. I had 1 neighbor, and then my other walls were the outdoor walls. They were to the rest of the outside. I didn't share any other walls other than 1 main wall with my unit neighbor. And at the time, I also didn't have a license. So my grandma, she would come down and pick me up for work, and I would practice driving in her car, and I would drive to work that way. Oftentimes, I would do early morning shifts, so I was starting at 5, sometimes 4, sometimes 6, it depended. And there were a few occasions where I would sleep in, and she would be at my door knocking, and I wouldn't answer because I was asleep. And so, because my family knew my apartment, they knew which room was my bedroom, and they would come to my window and they would knock on the glass. And usually that didn't scare me because I knew it was my family. They were just trying to wake me up. So it was a Sunday, it was around 3 in the morning, and I hear knocking on the window. I didn't have work this day, but I also didn't think twice about it because it was such a common thing for me that it wasn't scary. I hear a knock on the window and I wake up from it, and I just kind of sit there in silence for a second because I was like, did I just hear what I just heard? And then I hear a knock from a window not in my bedroom. And then I hear a knock on the living room window. And then silence. And then another knock on my bedroom window. And then a knock on the other window. The living room window. And then nothing. And I started to panic. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. But I was also so tired still that I really wasn't comprehending either. And I made the decision to open the curtain. And as I opened the curtain, I just so happened to come face to face with a full-grown man, scraggly hair, scruffy beard, wide-eyed. I shut that curtain as quick as I could, and as soon as I opened that curtain, I just felt instant regret. I should have just stayed quiet, and I should have done nothing. And he seemed to be circling the units, and I'm assuming knocking on everyone's windows. But as soon as I opened that curtain, he went from knocking on my windows to also knocking on my door. And that's when I panicked. And I decided I needed to call the police. I needed to do something about this because I don't know what his intentions are. He could purely just be doing this to scare us. He could be on drugs. Who knows what this guy could be doing? So I called the police, and as a first-time experience calling the police, I must say, it was not pleasant. They were quite rude. The first-person responders were quite not nice to me. But they did send an officer out, and they did give him my number. I saw flashlights outside, and I saw them patrolling the area. I tried to get the man on the phone. I tried to get the knocking recorded on the phone, but unfortunately by the time I ended up calling the police, he had pretty much stopped, which was honestly great. But the police looked around and they couldn't see him. They did give me a call and they let me know that they had had a look around. They couldn't see anything, but if I heard anything, to give them a call again, which I was grateful for. And that was really the end of that. I am really glad that nothing more came of that. And to be honest, looking back on it now, I don't think anything was going to happen. Especially if I didn't open that curtain. I think opening that curtain was definitely a really poor decision on my part. If I had left that curtain closed, I think I would have been okay even more. I don't think he was going to come in. And considering he left before any police even showed up, I just think he was just being a bit of a weirdo. But either way, it truly was a very scary experience to me. I don't really have any other IRL experiences like that where I've encountered scary people. And to be a woman living alone, especially at that age, I believe I was about 22, so I didn't have much to defend myself with. My unit was very, very small as well, so there wasn't really anywhere I could hide, and it's a one-way in, one-way out type of building. So it could have been really bad, and I'm glad it wasn't. So that is my final scary story. I hope you guys enjoyed the cozy vibes today and the scary stories. If you have your own scary stories, again, make sure to fill out the Google Forms in the description. I hope you guys enjoyed our little story time today and it gave you a little bit of a chill. I'm not the greatest storyteller, but I wanted it to feel more like a friends on the couch telling scary stories type of vibe, like very relaxed and chill. So I hope you guys liked it. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as always, and I will see you guys all in the next video. So bye everyone.